Coming up today on Rookie Roy, we're going to take on Porto in our first Classico of the save, and a chance for us to end our 6-year trophy drought as we take them on in the Portuguese Supercup before our first game in the Champions League Phase as we take on Juventus. Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 87 of Rookie to Royalty here on Shaun Does FM with Benfica. I hope you're doing well and coming today. We've got the Supercup here in Classico as we take on Porto away from home, so that could be quite tricky. That's the team, the only one expected to finish above us this season here in Portugal, and off the back of taking on Valencia off camera as well as the rest of transfer deadline day, which we're making our way through, and there could be a little bit of action that we do still on this day, seeing as we would like to increase our homegrown nation players here still. We'll then take on Juventus at home in our Champions League opener. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to that coming up in today's episode, but just played one game off the back of yesterday's one. We took on Club Brugge over 2 leagues to try and make our way through to that league phase of the Champions League, and also a few more transfers that did go through. So if you missed that one, I'll leave a link to it over in the top right corner. Did make a slight tactical change going into the game where we took on Estrela da Mora, and they were indeed sad off the back of the 9-0 thrashing that we did hand them. The change that we made actually was somewhat enforced with the team that we put out for this game. You'll see it over there in the bottom left corner. Piskunov was a bit fitter than any other player that we could use there in that central attacking midfield role. So what we did instead of the advanced playmaker was try a shadow striker, and as you can see, it looks like it might have worked here. Obviously, Estrela, probably the weakest team we've taken on so far in a playable league since we've come to Benfica, but still a 9-0 win is pretty darn good. Rui Silva again looking very good there from set piece with 2 goals. Martin has also picked up a double. Kabangu with a goal. Also Piskunov popped up with one there from that shadow striker role. Magales, he got 2 as well from set piece. To be those 2 new signs we made of the homegrown nation centre backs seem to be working quite well from set pieces. And also late on Max Johnston, he got a penalty by the players that we actually might look to sell before we do make the end of deadline day. So a very impressive performance from us there, a 9-0 win. It does now mean that we're the best team in terms of goal scoring here in League of Portugal. There's one area that's let us down here so far this season with Benfica, but we're still not quite on top. But the only reason that is the case is because all the other teams above us have played an extra game. So far we're unbeaten still here with this Benfica team, but obviously going to try again what we did in that most recent game, that 9-0 win, when we take on Porto here in the Super Cup. As I said, transfer deadline day will show you guys what we're doing off the back of this first game where we take on Porto, who so far this season have a little bit of an average start, it's fair to say, all the way down there in 6th with only 2 wins from their first 4 games, a draw there most recently when they took on Chaves, and also they got beaten 2-0 by União de Leiria. So not too sure there what's going on with Porto earlier this season. They were the team expected to be the biggest challenger for us here in the Portuguese league this season these days. We are indeed the favourites off the back of the transfer business that we have done, but Porto are a pretty clear second favourites. Obviously, a big game we've got coming up here first up in today's episode. And despite the fact it's not in the league, would be really nice here to pick up our first trophy. It's been a long time since we've had one here in this save. Let's check out here our history and our overview and actually make our way down here. Maybe it's the job history. You'll see it there. We last won a trophy at the end of 2025-26 in the Vanarama National League with good old Buxton. So it's been a long time now since we won a trophy here in the save. A nice early chance here in the Super Cup at Benfica, where thankfully we can put out a strong team for this first game of today's episode. As I said before, obviously going to stick there with the shadow striker. The one slight concern is maybe Piskunov will be better there and playing someone like Drought up front, but unfortunately, off the back of that good performance he put out in that 9-0 win, he's sitting down there out of our squad on a heavy workload. So it does mean that Karamori comes back in there in that shadow striker role and behind Piskunov, but this is our best 11 that we're putting out here for this first game of today's episode. Rui Silva also on a heavy workload. Arguably, he's someone that maybe should be in that team based on his form so far over someone like Renan or even Juan Perez, who to be fair is wanted here on deadline day and 32 years old. So it could be a little bit of movement here in the remaining 5 hours we do have here off the back of this game first up in today's episode. And also this is a competition that Benfica have been very dominant in of late. If we check out the history, despite the fact that we've won a trophy for a long time, we might not get a better chance. You'll see it there. They've won 5 in a row and they've won 7 of the last 8. So definitely, this is a competition that Benfica have been quite dominant in, or have been making our way through the save both at Buxton as well as, of course, at Jan Regensburg. Let's hope it continues with that slight tweak I've made, changing their advanced playmaker to a shadow striker. We mentioned it last year at Jan Regensburg, did quite well without the advanced playmaker when we got some red cards last season. So maybe that's a move that we should have done a bit sooner. But to be fair, it was kind of a good problem to have with that Jan Regensburg team, could actually do quite well when we did go down to 10 men. Hopefully that won't be an issue here these days with turned off, get stuck in. That's probably something we should have done a lot earlier with that red card trouble we got ourselves into last season. But definitely the shadow striker did seem to work pretty well, but it was against a pretty average team. So not too sure here how it's going to get on if we stick with it in today's episode. Going to find out pretty quickly with both Porto as well as Juventus. But they're going there with a 4-4-2, as you would have seen. Their form so far this season has been incredibly mixed, but hopefully can do a decent job here, as well as the fact that going to yesterday's episode, we did drop back to a standard defensive line too, so a couple of changes to what we were doing back at Jan Regensburg. Let's hope that it suits us here with this Benfica team. But as I said, Piskunov probably a bit more suited to that shadow striker role than someone like Kawamori, but here he is on the ball nice and early here in this game. Picks out Nadi down our left-hand side, squeeze it nicely for Kalafatoğlu, who will put that one away ever so slightly. A bit more of a green dot there in that left wing position, so thankfully playing him there is starting him a bit more familiar with that role that we did sign him to play here, coming in from Freiburg, because he looked really good for him. Thankfully scores that one nicely off the back of some good work from both Kawamori and Nadi, who somehow found himself there in a lot of space down our left-hand side and made it 1-0. And a few minutes later, a chance for us here on the counter-attack. Kalafatoğlu plays that one in there to Kawamori, looking quite dangerous in that shadow striker role. We try and float that one far post. The goalkeeper punches it clear, but then Luiz with a shot in that one. It comes off the woodwork. It's looking very dangerous here early with the change that we've made off the back of yesterday's episode. Up until then, our goal scoring here at Benfica actually was not too great compared to some other teams in the league. Maybe that was just the fact that we're taking on some half-decent ones here in Portugal to start our season, but that 9-0 win does now mean that we're both the best defensive and attacking team in this league. So let's hope here that continues, albeit this, of course, is a Supercup game, but so far, ever so slightly on the front foot. Certainly not as much as we were in that game I played off camera. It's expected, though, as we take on the strong Porto team, but thankfully, all the highlights, they have been in our favour. A long-range effort there again. I think that might have been from Florentino Luiz, but their goalkeeper there tips that one over the woodwork, and nothing we can do there from that set piece. Definitely feels like from corners, we're missing at least Rui Silva, a bit better than both Perez and Renan in the air, but now a highlight down the other end here as Porto are on the attack, really, for the first time so far in this game. Some interesting names there on their team sheet. Probably most interestingly, Miles Lewis Scully, but eventually make their way in field here and take on a shot through Butterina, and that will bring a close to the first half, because that shot, it does go high and wide. So thankfully, ever so slightly here on the front foot in the Super Cup, will take off Florentino Luiz, who you would have seen earlier in the half, where he did get to ease off tackles there as that DM on defend. What we'll do is bring on Monsalvo for him. He's our bench backup in midfield, seeing as he can cover both those positions quite well, that one, as well as central midfield. His tackling, it is quite good, but doing pretty well so far. As I said before, not as good as the game I played off camera, but we are taking on Porto, so that is to be expected, but not too many changes here going into that second half, just the one there with Luiz on that yellow card. So hopefully Monsalvo can do a decent job there in defensive midfield, but a pretty strong team we're putting out here for this game as Kalafatoğlu goes looking for a double, and unfortunately, we somehow can't bundle that one home, as there's a flare there in the background. That's definitely something I've noticed in terms of games here compared to over in Germany as well as England. The flares come out a bit more here over in Portugal. That one looked like it might be a Porto coloured one, of course, with them being the home team, but unfortunately, good chance to off the back of that free kick from Kalafatoğlu, but no one there to bundle it home, and Porto could just clear the line, so it does mean they're still well and truly in this game. Had a free kick there, but thankfully, absolute shocker in Fortea here with a chance on the counter-attack. Thankfully, gets brought down and Nadi's in the right place, right time. Gus back here on the attack. We try and float that one far post there, an open guy, and we can't find him. Now actually a good chance here for Porto on the counter-attack themselves. I'll pick out there one of the attackers who's on a yellow card. We kind of sag off him, but thankfully, he puts that one just wide. So Porto are well and truly still in this game, just not quite able to put the hammer down like we did in the game I played off camera. But obviously, as I've said a few times now, Porto are a very good team, It's supposed to be the second best one here in Portugal this season, but now we play a ball there. Far post, and Calafatoglou does go looking for a double. That one goes just over the bar. So certainly getting chances here to try and put these guys away, but not quite doing it away from home. A free kick there. We try and put some big pressure on them there from next. A little bit of a weird option, but unfortunately can't quite get their ball. So Porto here, they do keep it, albeit that passes poor, and Nardi can make an interception, having a good game there at left back. Now Calafatoglou will square that one for Kawamori. It's a complete flip from the first goal that we scored, and he puts that one away. So we do eventually grab a cushion goal here in the Super Cup, and fingers crossed can now make it 6 years in a row here with this Benfica team, and also bring our 6-year trophy drought to an end. Even though it is just the Super Cup, it would certainly be quite nice. One of the main reasons that we did make the move from Jan Regensburg, as well as the fact that we were hoping we'd get Champions League football, and indeed we did. But now with only 23 minutes left here in this game, we'll take off Piskunov while going a bit fairly on a 6.5. That'll be today for Grace Kabangu, as you saw earlier. Matthias De Rosa on a heavy workload off the back of a couple of goals that he did score in our previous 9-0 win in the league. But we'll just make that sub there, and that will hopefully be all we need to do for now. As again here, we are on the attack. We've got a pretty weak game off the back of this before we take on Juventus in the Champions League. So quite hopeful we can rotate quite heavily in that game. As again, Porto are on the attack, but to be fair, so far their shots are coming from outside the box, so don't mind that too much. They've not been too threatening. And especially now that we've got our cushion goal lead, with just over 15 minutes left here, going to make our last couple of subs. Prodigy can come on there, 4-4 Taylor at right back, and also Will Brown and Ronaldo there for Nadi, both our wing backs. They can get quite tight, and also Castillejo is looking a little bit fair there on a 6.6 in central midfield. Bring on Bitterino for him and drag Kawamori back to that central midfield role, which he did a pretty decent job in yesterday in that second leg when we took on Club Brugge. Hopefully those subs will just make sure here that we see out this 2-0 lead and make sure Porto don't find a way back into this game. But I think it's fair to say, based on Kawamori's rating, that shadow striker role, it is working quite well, and that really should have been 3-0. Nice square there for Grace Kabangu, but heads that one over the bar into what would have been an open net. With 5 minutes left here, we'll start to time waste ever so slightly as another flare goes off there. It's a free kick with Porto, so fingers crossed here this time wasting won't do the opposite of what I was hoping. I was thinking that Porto might get less chances if we start doing this, but really this is one of their best ones of the game. But thankfully someone there for them on an orange injury gets their shot blocked, so we're still on top here in this one. Stats-wise though, Porto actually been offering up a bit more than I would have thought based on the highlights that we've been seeing. But we pick up a 2-0 winner for the first time in 6 years, ever since we were back all the way at Buxton in the Vanarama National League. We're going to lift a trophy here in this journeyman save. It's with Benfica, and I think that might be our 7th game in charge here, maybe a bit more of Champions League qualifying that we did have. But we pick up the Supertaca, the Super Cup here over in Portugal. It's probably not worth too much in terms of prestige or anything like that, being a little bit of a community shield and whatnot here, but it does count as a trophy, and we do need those if we're going to want to progress to a bigger European job. But to be fair, this Benfica team so far, it does look pretty darn good. We'll see though, second up in today's episode, off the back of that 2-0 win over Porto. I'll play one more game off camera and also recap what we do on transfer deadline day. As I said, might be some moves going through, and hopefully can get at least one more player who's homegrown nation in the next couple of hours before that transfer window it does close, and we'll come back for our Champions League opener as we take on Juventus. And we are back with the final recap of what we did here in the transfer window for our first one at Benfica. 2 sales in terms of the first team, and 1 player coming in, which is a little bit interesting, a bit of a cheap option there for homegrown nation reasons. The players that we got rid of there on the right hand side, first up, our third choice goalkeeper in Shaun Anton Bruges. He's made his way to Salernitana over there in Italy for a fee of 7.25 million, rising to 9.5 million. His potential was only 3 stars when here at the club, and to be fair, we've got quite a few goalkeepers here who are under 21 and did not need to be registered for the Champions League. So felt like there we could get rid of Shaun Anton Bruges. Already picked up a pretty decent injury over there in his first start for Salernitana, so they won't be too happy about that. But considering we picked him up on a free back in 2030, that's a pretty good bit of business here, getting rid of our third choice goalkeeper. More notably, we did get rid of, if we make our way back up here, Con Arne Haraldsson. to PSG. This was the player who was our backup to Karamori. To be fair, so far this season, he's done a really good job, but going to PSG was a move that he wanted, and it did allow us to replace him with a homegrown nation lad, which does mean our squad registration is pretty much perfect now. We can do everyone in our Champions League squad. So he made his way there to PSG for a fee of 32.5 million, rising to 42.5. Not super ideal, because we did spend more on him back in 2028-29, back when a previous manager he was in charge. But at 29 years old, probably did need to make the most of that fee that PSG were offering. So Haraldson is now over in League O with the team, who in real life got kind of bettered by the team that we signed Francisco Trincao from in that Club World Cup final, and that would be Chelsea for 3 million, rising to 3.1. He's just a super versatile, handy option that we can use across that free and behind our striker in particular as a shadow one in that central attacking midfield role. So I think that's a decent move we've made there. Francisco Trincao coming in there for Haraldson, and especially because what that does to our transfer budget, we've got 46 million spare and a fair bit left over too in the wage budget. So definitely can make some more moves if we need to, and that would be quite useful too, because our scouting is still kind of in the beginner stages here, with this being our new club in this save as well. So definitely bumped up that transfer budget quite nicely off the back of the previous business that we have done. Our net spend in the end, only around £30 million. So all that business that we did not hurt the finances too badly. At least it shouldn't have. But yeah, it's still quite bad there over on the finance screen. But we've played one game off camera off the back of what happened there on deadline day, and picked up a 5-0 win over Valencia. Now, for this game, we did actually try out a 4-2-3-1. We did pretty well with that win over Porto, but still felt like maybe we could do better, in particular switching back to a 4-2-3-1 instead of the 4-1-1-3-1. You'll see it there from that first game we played this season when we took on Besiktas. The 4-2-3-1 actually been doing pretty well with keeping clean sheets and picking up quite a few goals. So I tried it there in that game against Valencia. Felt like it was a chance for us to at least test it in a game that we should be winning, and thankfully got the job done comfortably. Goals to Magalhaes, an own goal to Nemeth, De Rosa with a double, and Matsoso also picked one up. The change we made from the 4-1-1-3-1 though was the role of that defensive midfielder that we used to have. These days we've changed it to a deep line playmaker. Didn't want to go back to the ball-winning midfielder, obviously, with the yellow card issues we had last season at Jan Regensburg, and the DLP looks like it should suit pretty well both Florentino Luis as well as Franco Devius. So trying that now with this Benfica team, just trying to find something, and we'll see how it goes here for this big game where we take on Juventus in the Champions League. Obviously, probably doesn't matter too much what we do in some of these league games technically, because we should still be winning, but in the Champions League, we'll find out if these changes are going to make a difference. Hopefully they're the DLP on defender, but further forward might make us a bit more threatening attacking wise as well. The fact, of course, as we've now got that shadow striker, and still make us quite good defensively as well. So we'll see how it goes as we take on Juventus in our Champions League opener. Of course, this was a team who last season knocked us out at Jan Regensburg in that first knockout playoff round. So in a weird way, a chance here for some early revenge, but obviously going to come into this one as the outsiders against the team expected to be the fourth best there in Serie A, and they've started the season off well. They sit there in second, just 2 points in behind Napoli. So a big test for us here, but we are at home. Of course, our schedule for the Champions League this season, if we filter this out and get rid of all the competitions and then bring back the Champions League, once we get past Club Brugge, those games that actually are in the league phase, they're quite tough outside of Linfield and Derry City. So really, would be quite nice here to start picking up some points at home to hopefully make sure that we should make our way into the knockouts in some form. But definitely, it's a pretty tough schedule for us in this competition this season. So any points we can pick up at home, especially against the likes of Juventus, Ajax, as well as, of course, PSG, those will be quite big. In terms of our squad too, we do have an injury to Florentino Luis. He's out with a tight thigh for 1 to 2 days. So that's the reason that you would have seen there that Devia will be staying in that deep line playmaker role for this Champions League opener, at least in terms of the league phase. As well as that, Silva comes in for running out centre-back. That's just based on form, as well as the fact that so far he's been super threatening from aerial situations. Also Monsalvo in there over Castillejo, because Castillejo on a heavy workload and is super injury prone. So a couple of changes, in particular our two midfielders, which could make things interesting with the change we made there in that league game I played off camera. To be fair, the 4-2-3-1 results-wise is working a little bit better than the 4-1-1-3-1. We'll just see what roles do work there. We've already changed that advanced playmaker now to a shadow striker. Let's see if a deep line playmaker, it might counter that change that we did make, making sure there's a playmaker there in our midfield, because of course the other role, a central midfielder, so a playmaker, it could be quite useful. But Juventus there going with a 4-3-3 and a quite strong lineup to it, looks like there for the Italian Giants, the perennial title favourites. But in this save, and also in real life, you could argue, that's of course changed a little bit over the course of the last couple of seasons. But at home here, I'm kind of hopeful we can at least take a point off them here in this game. But of course, it's a bit of a chance for us here to see how our tactics are going to go against some good European teams. Both these games as well as the ones in League and Sporting as well as Porto will be quite good to see what works. And already this one might be cooking, because nice ball in there as we pick out Piskunov. I think it was Husik there who gets the assist from this round we had here down our right hand side of 1-2 there between him and Fortea. Just somehow there gets in behind the defence and inside the box, just squares that one. Piskunov for some reason is left all alone as the Ukrainian striker and puts that one away. So thankfully, with our first attack of the game, we take a 1-0 lead here in the league phase opener of the Champions League, albeit now it's Juventus who are on the attack. Ravella there tries to beat Lunin at his near post. Thankfully this time Lunin actually stops that one, unlike in that Club Brugge tie that we did have in yesterday's episode. But now a few minutes later, we are back down the other end. Some nice short passing here too on the edge of the box. Fortea plays it back to Husik's nice square there for Kalamori, and his shot does get blocked. Now unfortunately, that goes out for a goal kick, but already looking quite threatening here with what we're doing inside of these first 15 minutes. Fingers crossed it continues, and we can pick up some good points here in this Champions League opener. As I said, the only two bankers that we really have are Linfield. That one I think also was at home, and the final match day when we take on Derry City away. But by that stage, if things aren't going well, that could be a little bit of a nothing game. So fingers crossed he can pick up some points early and maybe surprise a team like Juventus. And they get a good chance here just before halftime. A free kick here, which Kalafatoğlu he will take. Does it short? Will the OP style work here in FM24 again? Yes, it does. Kawamori will put that one away in the bottom left corner. We take a 2-0 lead before halftime. So far, the switch to the 4-2-3-1 and those changes to our midfield do seem to be working quite well. Bit of a deflection there on that Kawamori shot, but he puts it away. So 2-0 up here just before halftime. Do cancel the highlight there with the praise that we did do, but I'm pretty happy with how it's gone so far. Juventus, when they've been on the attack, which hasn't been too much based on what we've seen in the match engine, it's not been too threatening, and we've looked quite dangerous when we have been on the front foot ourselves. And stats-wise, do deserve this 2-0 lead. So I'm pretty happy with how things are going. Absolutely no changes needed here at halftime, because no yellow cards as well, which is quite nice to see. Maybe that's another benefit of switching from a DM or a ball winner into that deep line playmaker that we're using with Devia in this game, as Kalafatoğlu does go down to a red heart. We'll see if that improves here, and it doesn't before a highlight starts. So what we're going to do here is, before this go through, make a sub there. It will be Martinez who comes on for him, and also we'll bring on Proretti for Fortea, who has just picked up a yellow card. So our first couple of subs here, 10 minutes in to the second half, we'll see if this highlight will still take place, and it does. Fortea still on the field, does take that from. We just play it short here down our right hand side. That ball is actually a pretty good one. It finds Kalafatoğlu, and Luca Fiorini, who scored some big goals when knocking us out with Jan Regensburg last season with a shocking tackle. It's a straight red card, and surely that should see us hold on here and pick up all 3 points. All of a sudden, feeling pretty comfy with this 2-0 lead against this Juventus team. It does mean we'll take off Devia and give a run to Mali, who is third choice in that defensive midfielder, should I say, now deep line playmaker role that we're using. Also, an on-camera debut here for Francisco Trincao. We'll bring him on there for Monsalvo and move Kalamori back to central midfield, and we'll also bring on Renato for Emmanuel Nardi, who can sit quite regularly on a heavy workload and be quite injury prone. So hopefully can now make those subs here with a one-man advantage, and of course this 2-0 lead. A corner lead to Juventus, thankfully, just do enough there to deal with the danger, and actually got a chance there to try and do something on the counter-attack. And right again, as Karamori plays a nice ball over the top there for Husik, who takes on the shot. To be fair, didn't really test the goalkeeper, just the wrong side of that right-hand post. But definitely now, this should be a game we can pick up all 3 points from with that man advantage that we have had ever since the 56-minute mark. And to be fair as well, might not need to do too much time wasting. We'll do a little bit here with only 10 minutes left, but surely that's all we're going to need to do here against the team that only have 10 men on the field. So thankfully getting a little bit of a helping hand here in our Champions League opener as we take on Juventus. But to be fair, we scored both goals when they still had 11 players on the field. So we make our way here into only 4 minutes of added time. To be fair, the second half, not up to a heck of a lot outside the red card that Fiorini did get in stats-wise. That is a pretty well-deserved 2-0 win. Does feel like they're the 4-2-3-1. It's going to be worth sticking with if we can beat Juventus by a couple of goals. Obviously helped out there by that red card in the second half, but already had our 2-0 lead, and it did mean that we can give some players a rest, especially because off the back of this, we've got Porto again in the League of Portugal this time, and then we've got Man City away in our next Champions League game. So a big little block here we've got coming up in the save, but that's a brilliant start to our Champions League campaign, especially with how tough our fixtures are this season. We open it up with a 2-0 win at home over Juventus. So a great start there to our Champions League campaign this season with Benfica, at least in terms of the league phase, picking up there a 2-0 win over Juventus, helped out by that red card, but still, that is quite good. Chelsea beating PSG as per normal. Barcelona getting beaten there by Copenhagen, probably the big upset there on that opening day. But yeah, that's a pretty good start for us here with this Benfica team. And also, we did pick up, of course, the Super Cup, our first trophy in 6 years with that win over Porto as well. So if you enjoyed that in today's episode, then do make sure to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video. And if you haven't done so already and are enjoying the series here on the channel, also make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on as well. As I said earlier, probably going to come back pretty shortly off back of those games that we have just played, because next up we've got Porto again, but this time in League of Portugal. We'll see maybe if we can put a bit more of a hurting on them with the 4-2-3-1 compared to the 4-1-1-3-1, which was a little bit more stretchy outside that game where we thumped Estrella when changing to that shadow striker, and then Manchester City away in the Champions League. So a couple there of big games coming up in tomorrow's episode. If we can beat Porto in that first one, could be a decent gap over those guys quite early in the season. 8 points. We might already be getting to a little bit of a two-horse race with both us and Sporting if we can win that game. So fingers crossed might be able to do that there in tomorrow's episode. A big double header with Porto in the league and Man City in the Champions League. So until then, thank you very much for watching. Keep on keeping on, and I'll see you then. Cheers.